to all. Today's daf is Yerushalmi Brachot daf mem hey. We are starting about halfway through the Amud at the two dots with the words Minayin L'Ne'ilah. And in the Vilna Tzuras daf, it's Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, the second line at the two dots. And today's daf is sponsored Leili Nishmas Marsh Miriam Sar Bas Yaakov Moshe. Her neshama should have an aliyah. And the Gemara says Minayin L'Ne'ilah. How do we know that one should daven Ne'ilah? Now, why are we discussing Ne'ilah? So this is either because we've been talking about Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, and Musaf, all of which correspond to something. So what about Ne'ilah? Now, others explain that this is coming from the previous Gemara. On the bottom of Mem Daled Amud Beis, we had a story that on Yom Kippur, Rav told his attendant to bring him his cloak just as the sun is hitting the tops of the palm trees so that he could daven. Now, we originally understood that he wanted to daven Mincha. However, the Gemara had concluded with a memra that Rav davened Mincha before Plag. If so, that must be that the Yom Kippur story was referring to Rav davening Ne'ilah, and the Gemara is going to speak this out explicitly later on. So either which way we're talking about Ne'ilah, and how do we know that we're supposed to daven Ne'ilah? So Rabbi, he answers, we have a pasuk that tells us, Gam ki tarbu tefillah. Even if you increase your tefillah, and the pasuk continues, Eineni shemea, I'm not going to listen, Yidechem damim maleu, because your hands are full of blood. Mikan, we see from here, shekol amarva betefillah nene. Anyone that increases their davening, and they daven a lot, they're going to be answered. And the only reason why this pasuk says that they're not going to be answered is because their hands are full of blood. But if that's not the situation, then when a person davens a lot, they will be answered. But now the Gemara tells us, this seems to be a switch in Rabbi Levi's shita. That's because Taman Amar of Abba Bered of Papi Rabbi Yeshua the Sechnin B'Shem Rabbi Levi. So we have a member in the name of Rabbi Levi. The pasuk tells us, B'chal etzev yeh maisar. In all toil there is profit. Udvar svasayim ach lemachsar. But the word of the lips only detracts. And Chana, the mother of Shmuel, al yidei sheribas betfila, since she increased her tefillah, she davened a lot. Katzur b'yamav shel Shmuel, she actually shortened the life of Shmuel. Shamar, she told her husband Elkanah, when he said, why don't you come up to be Eilerega with me? But she had baby Shmuel. So she told her husband, when he grows up, I'm going to send him to the Mishkan, v'yashav sham ad olam, and he's going to be there ad olam, which means forever. Meaning once he grows up, then I'll send him to the Mishkan and he'll be there forever. Now, v'haloi ein olam shel Levi el chamishim shana. The entire life of any given Levi is 50 years. T'chsiv, because the pasuk says, u'ben chamishim shana yashav mitzvah avodah. And when a Levi is 50 years old, he has to return from the tzvah avodah, meaning he doesn't do avodah in the Beis HaMikdash anymore. So by her saying that Shmuel's going to stay in the Mishkan ad olam, even though she didn't intend for him to die at the end of his 50-year service in the Mishkan, that's what happened. So we see that because she davened too much, her son actually died young. The Gemara just asks as an aside, Shmuel died when he was 52, not when he was 50. So Rabbi Yisrael, he answers, the 2 extra years, meaning he died at 52 and not at 50, that's because it took 2 years to wean him. And so those 2 years weren't part of the cheshbon. So now we just conclude our question, but over here he says this, meaning over here we had quoted Rabbi Levi saying that the pasuk of Gam ki tarbu tefillah tells us that a person should daven a lot. So Gemara says no stira, I amra kain liyachid kain letzibor. One is referring to an individual, one is referring to a tzibor. When an individual davens too much, that could be detrimental. But when a tzibor davens a lot, meaning the tzibor is davening the ilah together, that's a good thing and no bad's going to come from that. But now we're going to have the opposite understanding of Chana. Rabbi Chia says b'shem Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Shimon Chalafta b'shem Rabbi Meir. The pasuk by Chana tells us, V'haya ki hirbasal ispal el Hashem, and it was when she increased her davening to Hashem. Mikan shekol amarba betfila nene. From here we learn that someone that increases their tefillah, they daven a lot, they will be answered. It's because of this pasuk that Shmuel was born in the first place. So we see that it wasn't to Chana's detriment that she davened a lot, it was to her benefit. And now the Gemara says, Emasai Ne'ilah. When is Ne'ilah supposed to be davened? At what point in time during the day? So Rabbanan de Kesar and Amrin, the Rabbanan of Kesaria say, Ispalgon Rav Rabbi Yechon, Rav and Rabbi Yechon argue about this. Rav Amar Rav says, Ben Ilah Shari Shemayim. It's when the gates of Shemayim are closing. When do the gates of Shemayim close? Well, the sun sets by passing through the open gates of Shemayim, the light fades, and then the gates close. So Ne'ilah Shari Shemayim is at night, which means, according to Rav, Ne'ilah is davened at night. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, Ben Ilah Shari Heichal, it's when the Heichal of the Beis HaMikdash is closed, and that's still during the day. Now, Rav Yudon Antirdaya says, Masisa Messiah Rabbi Yochanan, we have a Mishnah that's arrived for Rabbi Yochanan. The Mishnah says as follows, B'shloisha prakim, on 3 occasions, HaKayhanim noisen es kapeihem, the Kayhanim do nesias kapayim, they do berachas Kayhanim, Arba pa'am bayim, 4 times during the day, which is B'shachris, B'musaf, B'mincho, B'nilas Sha'arim, at Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, and at Ne'ilah. And when were these 3 occasions? B'tainiyos, on public fast days. So when they had a public fast day, which is usually because of a drought, because they didn't have enough rain, they had a whole setup of tefillas, and one of those tefillas was Ne'ilah. Uv Mamadais, and at the Mamadais. What were the Mamadais? So just like Kehanim were divided into 24 Mishmaras, there was also 24 groups of Yisraelim that were Am Yisrael's representatives who were present when the Karban Talmud was brought. Now, besides for the ones present in the Beis HaMikdash, there were also other Anshe Maimed that remained in their towns who fasted and said special tefillas, including Ne'ilah. And last we have Yom Kippurim and on Yom Kippur, and we we all know that on Yom Kippur we have an Ne'ilah. Now, Mem based on top, here's the Raya. Is the Chameimar Ne'ilah Shari Shemayim? Are you really able to say like Rav that we say Ne'ilah at Ne'ilah Shari Shemayim, which is at nighttime? That can't be, because what did the Mishnah say? Bayoim. The Mishnah said that there's 3 occasions that we're going to say Birchos Kaihanim 4 times during the day, and according to Rav, Ne'ilah is said at night. So this Mishnah is a Raya for Rabbi Yochanan. And now going back to the story that we quoted at the beginning of today's Gemara, Achad De'imei de Rav Ada, the brother of the mother of Ada, meaning Rav Ada's uncle, Havatzar Gulse de Rav, he watched the overcoat or the cloak of Rav, B'tzuma Rabba on Yom Kippur. Amar Le, Rav told him, Katichme Shimsha Bereish Dikli, when you see the sun at the tops of the palm trees, Tevli Gulse, give me my garment, give me my overcoat, Denatzli Ne'ilah Sha'arim, so that I could daven Ne'ilah. So here we have the Gemara speaking out explicitly that the tefillah that Rav wanted to daven was not Mincha, but it was Ne'ilah. But now the Gemara says, Mechalfa Shitase de Rav. It seems to me that we have a switch or a stira in the Shita of Rav. Tamadu Amar over there, he said, Ben Ne'ilah Shari Shemayim, that when is Ne'ilah supposed to be davened? When the gates of Shemayim are being closed, which is already at nighttime. But Amar, and over here it seems to be that he's saying Ben Ne'ilah Shari Heichal, when the Heichal is being closed, because he asked for his coat to daven Ne'ilah while it was still daytime. So Rav Masi answers, Aidei to have a Marich Rabbit Sloise Sagin, since Rav used to daven a very long tefillah, have a Magil and Ne'ilah Shari Shemayim, he would reach Ne'ilah Shari Shemayim, which means he was still davening Ne'ilah by the time Ne'ilah Shari Shemayim came around, which was nighttime. Which means that Rav holds that Ne'ilah is started during the day, but one has to daven Ne'ilah into the night. And the Gemara continues to talk about Ne'ilah. Ne'ilah ma'u shetiftar shel erev. Does Ne'ilah pater the evening tefillah? Meaning, according to Rav, if a person is going to be davening Ne'ilah and it's already nighttime, so maybe Ne'ilah could be in place of Ma'ariv, and he shouldn't have to daven Ma'ariv after Ne'ilah. So Rav Abba and Rav Huna say b'shem Rav, Ne'ilah pater shel erev. Then Ne'ilah paters the evening tefillah, meaning one does not have to daven Ma'ariv once they finish Ne'ilah. Now, Amarli Rav Abba Rav Huna, Rav Abba asked Rav Huna, how could it be that Ne'ilah could be in place of Ma'ariv? How does he mention Havdalah? We know that Havdalah, which is Atachan and Tanu, is mentioned in the bracha of Atachainin. Well, if he's not going to be davening Ma'ariv and he's only going to be davening Ne'ilah, how does he say Havdalah? Now, Amar Rav Yoina Rav Abba, Rav Yoina has a question of his own that he asked Rav Abba, how could 7 brachas pater 18? Ma'ariv has 18 brachas in it, whereas Ne'ilah only has 7. So how could the 7 brachas of Ne'ilah pater the 18 brachas of Ma'ariv? So Amar Rav Abba told Rav Yoina, wasn't already refuted? I already asked a good question on Rav's Shita, so why are you asking another question? I already knocked Rav's Shita away. So Amrlei, Rav Yoina responded, Begindi Tasvas Tiftil, just because you refuted it, now that means there's no more Shita anymore, it ceases to exist, it's been nullified. It's possible that the question you asked is going to be answered, and at least we'll still be remaining with my question. And now the Gemara continues with this. Rav Yossi says, Mada Akshi Rav Abba Kashiyeyos. Now which Rav Abba asked regarding Havdalah, that's a good question. Mada Akshi Rav Yoina, Loi Kashiyeyos. That which Rav Yoina asked regarding 18 brachas and 7, that's not a good question. Kal Hekelu Al Mishum Tanisai. They were more makel with him because he's fasting, Shehu Shava Pater Shmona Esrei, that the 7 brachas of Ne'ilah could pater the 18 brachas of Ma'ariv. Usually wouldn't say that 7 brachas could pater 18, but particularly in the case of Ne'ilah, since he's fasting, we're going to be makel with him. Now, Rav Abba Bar Mamal, Amar Lechavraya, he said to these Chachamim, Ma'arim in Kulchan Shabbos, from all of your discussion I hear, She'in Ne'ilah Pater Shel Erev, then Ne'ilah does not pater Ma'ariv. And Rav Simon B'Shem Rav Shubin Levi says, Ein Ne'ilah Pater Shel Erev, then Ne'ilah does not pater Ma'ariv. And right for this, that even though a person daven Ne'ilah, he still has to daven Ma'ariv. Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabban, Tani Reb Chia came. Reb Chia taught this in a brisa. B'chol yom adam espal shmona esrei. Every single day, a person has to daven 18 brachas. That's for Ma'ariv, and that includes b'matzei Shabbos, on Matzei Shabbos, u'v'matzei Yom Kippurim, and on Matzei Yom Kippur, u'v'matzei Tainas Sibur, and Matzei Tainas Sibur. So we see that even though a person was fasting and a person davened Ne'ilah, and Ne'ilah was davened that night, still he has to daven Ma'ariv. And more about Ne'ilah of Yitzchak Bar Nachman says, B'Shem Reb Shua ben Levi, Yom Kippurim shechal yos b'Shabbos. When Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, af al pi she'ein Ne'ilah b'Shabbos. Even though on a standard Shabbos we don't have Ne'ilah, Maskir shel Shabbos ben Ne'ilah, we still mention Shabbos in Ne'ilah. One might have thought that on a standard Shabbos there's no Ne'ilah, so there's no reason to mention Shabbos in Ne'ilah. So over here, Reb Shua ben Levi is telling us that we still mention Shabbos in Ne'ilah. And something similar to this, Mem Vav Amud Aleph on the top, Oisvan Alei, they added on to this, the Rosh Chodesh shechal yos b'Tainas Sibur. If Rosh Chodesh falls out on a Tainas Sibur, af al pi she'ein Ne'ilah b'Rosh Chodesh, even though there's no Ne'ilah on a standard Rosh Chodesh, Maskir shel Rosh Chodesh ben Ne'ilah, we will mention Rosh Chodesh in Ne'ilah. Now what does that mean that Rosh Chodesh fell out on a Tainas Sibur? So obviously nowadays there's no public fast days on Rosh Chodesh. This refers to back in the day when there was 2 things different. Firstly, it was unclear when Rosh Chodesh would be. Adam had to come and testify when it would be Rosh Chodesh. It could be this day, it could be the next day. So that's the first thing. Now the second thing is that they would establish a series of fast days due to a lack of rain. So the next X amount of Mondays and Thursdays, we're going to have fast days. So therefore it's possible that one of these predetermined fast days would fall out on a day that became Rosh Chodesh. And it's on that fast day's Ne'ilah that we'll mention Rosh Chodesh. We're going to stop here for the day, pick up tomorrow, continuing with similar halachas. For now, everyone...
Should have a wonderful day.